All right. Corrie Ten Boom, Keeper of the Angel's Den by Janet and Jeff Benge. And they're from New Zealand, by the way. That's pretty interesting. All right, Chapter 5, The Secret Room. Corrie tossed and turned in bed that night in her room on the top floor of the Beje. B-E-J-E is a Dutch word, and it's pronounced Beje. And that's the name of the Ten Boom family's home, the Beje. She tried to imagine herself bursting into the food office and demanding ration cards, or else. Or else what? What else could she do? Then, as the bells of St. Bavo chimed midnight, an entirely new thought struck her. She didn't have to steal the ration cards on her own. There were many loyal Dutch men and women who would help her. Finally, she drifted off to sleep with a plan beginning to take shape in her mind. She remembered that the husband of a woman from church worked in the food office in Haarlem. His name was Fred Kornstra, and perhaps he could help. The next afternoon, Corrie pushed her old bicycle out into the alley and began the short ride to the Kornstra's house. Like all the other bikes out that afternoon, hers made a terrible clatter over the cobblestones. A year before, the Germans had made all the people in Holland hand over their bicycle tires to be shipped to Germany to help with the war effort. Cobblestones, that's a vocabulary word, naturally rounded stones used in pavement or construction, cobblestones. Corrie supposed the rubber in them had been used to make truck tires. As she pedaled hard against the wind, Corrie thought about what she was doing. She didn't know the Kornstras very well. What if they were on the Nazis' side? What if they turned Dutch underground workers in for the reward money? As she rode along, she prayed that something would happen to stop her from reaching their house if it was not safe for her to do so. Nothing happened, and soon Corrie found herself asking Fred Kornstra for help. He listened without saying much, and Corrie began to fear she'd gone too far. But as it turned out, he was thinking hard to come up with a plan. In the end, Fred Kornstra decided he would find a friend to break into the food office when only he and one other worker were there. His friend would tie up Fred and the other worker and steal some ration cards. Corrie thanked Fred and waited to see what happened. The following Wednesday, she heard the news. The food office had been broken into, and 100 ration cards were gone. The two clerks in the office at the time had tried to fight off the robber, but they were both badly beaten and tied up. The following day, Corrie visited Fred Kornstra to see how he was recovering from his injuries. His right eye was swollen shut, and he had a huge gash on his forehead, but he smiled when he saw Corrie. Gash, that's a vocabulary word. A deep, long cut in flesh. Gash. He handed her a package to share with her family. When Corrie got home and opened it, there were 100 ration cards inside. Getting enough ration cards was only the beginning of things at the Beje. Neither Corrie, Betsy, nor Casper Ten Boom had given much thought to some of the other aspects of hiding people for a long period, but help was on its way. A week after the robbery, Corrie opened the door to find a Jewish woman and her 3 small children standing there. She ushered them inside and showed them into the dining room, where Betsy gave each of them a cup of soup. Just as Corrie and Betsy finished seating the children on cushions placed on the dining room chairs, there was a knock at the side door. Betsy raised her eyebrows and pulled more cups from the sideboard. Sideboard, vocabulary word, piece of dining room furniture having compartments. Sideboard. It was going to be a busy night. Corrie rushed to the door. It was after curfew time now, and anyone found on their doorstep would put them all in danger. Corrie swung the door open and pulled the broad-shouldered women standing there inside. It was only in the light of the clock shop that she realized it wasn't a woman at all. Oh, that's a typo. My book says women, but it's woman. It wasn't a woman at all, but Kick, her brother Willem's oldest son. Kik, K-I-K. How'd you like to have the name Kik? Well, some of you guys would. What are you doing here? Asked Corrie. Is your family all right? Kik nodded. Yes, Tante Corrie. I have come to take you somewhere. And then surveying his aunt's thin dress, he added, put on a coat now and follow me. Surveying, vocabulary word, looking at someone or something carefully. Surveying. So let's get that sentence. And then surveying his aunt's thin dress, he added, put on a coat now and follow me. Corrie didn't dare ask questions. She knew it must be important for Kik to risk their both being out after curfew. She raced up to her room, grabbed her coat. When she came down, Kik was wrapping an old sheet around the rims of her bicycle wheels. Not too glamorous, he said, smiling, but it sure cuts down the noise. Corrie nodded gratefully and followed her nephew out into the brisk evening. It seemed like an hour before Kik slowed his pace. It was a moonless night, and of course all the streets were out. Streetlights were out. So Corrie had to strain her eyes to keep Kik's gray coat and green flowery scarf in view. They pedaled through back alleys, over bridges, and between tall stands of trees until finally Kik motioned for Corrie to stop. They were outside a large, stately house. Kik and Corrie got off their bikes. Then Kik reached over and pulled Corrie's bike level with his. With one hand on each bicycle, he lifted the bikes into the air and carried them up the wide stairway to the house. There was no need to ring the doorbell. The door opened at just the right moment, and Kik walked in, a bicycle in each hand, as though it were the way he visited everybody. Corrie followed close at his heels. Inside, Kik took off the woman's coat and untied the scarf. Now he looked like Kik again. Corrie was surprised to see at least 30 bikes lined up along both sides of the elegant hallway inside the house. She wondered what kind of meeting would cause so many people to risk arrest for being out after curfew. Before she had time to think about an answer, she and Kik were ushered into the front room where people sat in small groups, deep in serious discussion. A maid offered Corrie a cup of coffee. Corrie expected it to be brewed from the ground figs that had passed for coffee for the past 18 months at the Bayet, but she was happily mistaken. From the elegant silver coffee pot, the maid poured the strongest, blackest, richest-smelling coffee Corrie had seen in a long time. Of all the things about this strange night, Corrie would remember most the wonderful aroma of the coffee. Kik seemed to know every person in the room, although he introduced everyone as Mr. or Mrs. Smith. Corrie understood perfectly. The less people were able to tell the Nazis about each other, the better. Soon the 30 or so Mr. and Mrs. Smiths in the room were all explaining to Corrie how they could help her. There was an amazing array of offers of help. A man with a bald head said he could get permission to bury the bodies of divers. Now remember divers, those are the ones that go underground to help protect the Jews. A woman with thick green stockings said she knew of a midwife who would deliver babies under difficult conditions. A younger man offered to reconnect the Bayet's telephone. The girl beside Corrie offered the services of an expert forger. Forger, that's a vocabulary word, a person who falsifies a signature. Corrie tried to take in all the information, but her head was spinning. She hadn't even thought about people dying or having secret babies at the Bayet. For the first time, she understood that many of these people expected the occupation to go on for many more months, even years. Right now, we're not sure about this shelter in place. We're not sure about all this shutdown. It could go on for years. Is Corrie worried about it? No, she's trusting God, and that's what we're going to do. We're just going to trust God. Clearly, she and Betsy and her father were going to have to get more serious about their quote-unquote guests. As she pedaled back through the streets of Harlem long after midnight, Corrie thought about the last conversation she'd had. A man with an enormous mustache had asked her where the guests at the Bayet would hide during a raid. Corrie had to admit there was really nowhere. Maybe they could climb out onto the roof and hide there. The man had shook his head and said, "That will not do. Lives depend on the right hiding place. I will send someone over to you in the next few days. His name is Smit, and he builds the best secret rooms in all of Harlem." The next few days flowed much as the ones before. Some guests stayed one night, some stayed 1 week, and some, like Mayor Mossel, whom they had renamed Uzi, would stay till the end. Uzi had been a cantor at the synagogue in Amsterdam, and because of the Jewish looks, Willem had not been able to find anyone else who would risk taking him in. Uzi's pregnant wife, Dora, and their 2 small sons were more fortunate. A Dutch farmer and his family were looking after them. With more Jews arriving at the Bayet every day, Corrie was very glad when, a week after the midnight meeting, a Mr. Smit stepped into the clock shop one morning and introduced himself as a building inspector. That's where we're stopping.